Okay, so this video is about the statement of intent, but a more protracted, extended, detailed version for people like me who really like detail and like to cover as much as they possibly can. So if you're one of those people, that's a personality type you have, this is something that would be more appealing to you, I'd guess. So just quickly going over to the top left-hand corner, how we get rid of the yellow editable bits. Just going to click on that yellow pen here, the drop-down window, until you get to no color, and there you have it. I'm just putting that back. Same thing, just clicking on the yellow there. Okay, so I've explained all the other parts in the previous video, so if you want to understand what this means, a recorded post, go watch the shortened version of the statement of intent. This is the longer one. So let's see what the differences are. I, your name, stand under objective morality and defend the self-evident truth that acting against one's conscience cannot be morally justified, as there is no inherent obligation to do so. So that means that you're not forced by nature to actually act outside of alignment of morality. So if you're not forced by nature, that's a free will choice you make, and therefore you're accountable to those choices. I stand for exposing the truth about men and women in positions of assumed authority using the cover of legislation to violate inviolable individual rights. So that stands basically to cover pretty much anybody. Anyone who uses some kind of justification of policy and procedure, I was just doing my job, just following orders, that all covers them, right? And most of them will quote some kind of legislation. So think about all the lockdowns and all the mandates they had. You know, they all said, well, it's the law, it's the law. No, it wasn't. It was people following legislation calling it law, right? So this covers everyone who's ever done anything to transgress against your rights or anyone else's rights. So that's why it's a cover-all, and it gets into more detail here. I stand in defense of individual free will choice by categorically asserting that those who employ power over tactics such as threats, intimidation, manipulation, exploitation, deceit, violent and deadly force to forcibly dominate and control others into compliance are unequivocally engaging in criminal and immoral acts. Such actions inherently delegitimize any and all claims to authority. So you think about the police, for example, right? This covers them to a T. How many times they'd stand there at the side of the road and keep quoting Road Traffic Act, you know, as to why they got to smash your window, drag you out of the car, fine you, handcuff you, you know, detain you, the whole thing, right? So it covers all of that. It blows all their arguments out of the water, because basically any rights you don't have as an individual, you can't claim that someone has written them into existence. It's not a thing. And that goes on to say, I affirm my commitment to informing those who seek to trespass on the rights of the individual without just cause of their moral culpability for enforcing immoral orders and policies, regardless of any purported justification. The next one says, calling out the falsehood that employees of man-made institutions created to equitably serve the needs of man possess the authority to grant and delegate rights that individual members who collectively form that institution do not possess individually. So like I said, anything you don't possess as an individual cannot all of a sudden materialize just because you come together in a group and had a ritual about it and written something on paper. That's not how nature works, right? So you're just calling that out. And you're also saying that you're committing to exposing the fallacy that a document or ritual has the power to alter objective morality and transform evil into something good, which is pretty much where we are, right? You know, people use this idea that someone else has greater authority than them, and they just need to follow orders, and they're being, you know, they're right and justified by doing so. And that calls all that out, right? So it just totally disarms any of these justifications these criminals with uniforms use. Whether it's a uniform like a police, ambulance officer, nurse, you know, doctor, doesn't matter what the uniform is, right? An MP, all the same, right? It's the same. Counsellor, doesn't matter, right? Because we're all individuals. So we're just stripping it right back to its basics, where people can't hide and they can't use any kind of claim to authority. Even a judicial officer or a judge or magistrate covers all of it. I willingly and wholeheartedly enter into lawful non-consent. So that just means that you are withdrawing your free will consent, right? So you're making it very clear that you do not grant it, because you know they use that system of some kind of implied consent. You're saying it. None of it doesn't exist, right? By holding all those who claim authority accountable to Article 61 of the Democratic Common Law Constitution of Magna Carta 1215, invoked on March 23, 2001. So there's only one binding agreement that allows people to presume some form of authority to make decisions on behalf of others, and that is the Magna Carta 1215. There is no other agreement, especially across the entire Commonwealth. Right? So you're binding them to that article, that once they become rogue, that they are accountable to the people. That's what you're binding them to, and you're holding their feet to the fire. And if we don't do that, this violation is going to keep happening and getting worse. I vow to hold men and women professing to be Crown agents of this Commonwealth nation, if it's Australia, you write Australia, to the binding agreement that calls for all transgressors to stand trial before a jury of the people for violating indefeasible individual rights entrusted to them for safeguarding. Because that's what every single public servant is meant to be doing. They're not meant to be dominating you and dictating to you. They're meant to be safeguarding your individual rights. Otherwise, they do not have authority. As soon as they violate it, they've lost their authority and they've become criminal. And that's what you're vowing to do, right? That's what the universe calls you to do, right? If you don't want to be subject to more pain and suffering, there's a requirement for you to stand and act in accordance with your moral compass. And so you're just creating a statement that basically affirms that. Now, you can take or add anything you want as long as you understand the principles that are set out here. That's all that really matters, right? This is not a one-size-fits-all. You can adjust it any way you please, right? Again, affirm to subscribe. You put the date here, signed. If you want to put autograph, like I said in the previous one, please do, no big deal. I personally don't freak out about those things, because if you start doing that, you're basically giving authority to this criminal system that tells you the difference between sign and what's the other one I just said? Autograph, they just invented that, right? And it's all just to distinguish themselves from everyone else. But once you're sovereign, you don't need to play into that game. Okay, so hopefully that's given you some ideas as to how you can do this. You attach it to any letters that you want to send, or the lawful notice process that we've got if you don't want to do the oath of allegiance. So this is where this comes in handy. So it gives you another alternative, because the central meaning is the same. So that's really what matters. It's your central meaning, what you're intending to do when you are putting these criminals that masquerade as public servants on some kind of notice, or letting them know about the crimes they're committing.